From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Okta explains hack source and response timeline. Google Calendar is a C2 infrastructure, and data brokers selling U.S. service members secrets. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we get a chance for some insight, opinion, and expertise on those stories from our return guest, Howard Holton, CTO of GigaOm. Howard, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Our sponsor for today is OffSec. They are hosting a virtual summit for CISOs and cybersecurity leaders called Evolve on November 15th. So be sure to join in on that. For this live stream, you can join us on YouTube Live by going to CISOseries.com, hitting the events dropdown, and looking for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. It's just the third one down. Click on it to join us, but we're going to jump right in. Be sure to contribute with your comments as well. We love to see them and love to get them into the show where we can. So let's start with our first story. Okta explains hack source and responsible timeline. Okta security head David Bradbury called the hack an internal lapse, blaming an employee who had signed into their personal Google profile on a Chrome browser of their Okta managed laptop. Okta blamed their 2-week delay in reporting the issue on focusing their investigation in the wrong place, which according to the record was on access support cases. But Okta later realized that the hacker was navigating its system in a different way, thus producing different log events. So a lot to sort of talk about there, Howard. Obviously not great for Okta's reputation. How can they win back people's trust?
So I think one of the big mistakes companies make is they all talk about how we've integrated security into our platform, right? Here's our security features. Here's the new whiz-bang, like speeds and feeds of security. I care so much less about the speeds and feeds of security today than I do tell me how you've integrated security into how you write the software, how you build the software, how you operate your company, not how you've given me yet another feature that ultimately is fine. It protects me as long as no one goes after you.
Wait, so developers are actually putting things to market before they're tested for security?
You could have removed the word security. It's still accurate. Developers put things to market before they are tested, right? Like it's kind of the name of the game. I also I'm always disgusted by the kind of blame game, right? Well, the problem was we had this guy who logged into his personal Chrome browser. It's like, really? Like, no. You don't get to blame him. You have to own the fact that you allowed that to happen. So just own it, right? We didn't have the proper controls in place in managing endpoints used by our people. Like it's don't blame one guy. It's your fault. Could have happened to any other person.
Yeah, this one is definitely a little bit cringy, and with the hey, we were looking in the wrong place. That's why the delay took so long. I'm not sure that is something that makes them look any better. And with being a security company on top of it all, it does you might expect something from a firm that's primary goal is not to provide security to folks. So as much as I don't want to pile on here, it's tough not to with some of the narrative going on around this story.
It actually feels like everybody's been using the same PR firm that SolarWinds used. You know what I mean? Like, how can we possibly make this worse? There was a bit. Yep. I'm not a big Andy Dick fan, but there was a bit years ago on like SNL or something where Andy Dick was effectively mocking George W. Bush because he had such weird pauses and such bizarre answers for some of the things. And it was Andy Dick standing over on the sidelines with a microphone going, okay, wait, don't say anything. Wait. Okay, now say this. And it was some bizarre thing. And then Bush would say that, and it kind of feels like a little bit of that is happening. Like, don't say anything. Okay, now blame the intern. Okay, now blame another third party. Now say we got lost in the forest and couldn't find our way back to our tents. It's like, come on, people.
Yeah, CCL said there were no interns in there, so we could definitely go down the rabbit hole there. So definitely fantastic story there. Let's move on to the next one. Google Calendar as a C2 infrastructure. So Google has issued a warning regarding multiple threat actors sharing a public proof of concept exploit named Google Calendar Rat that relies on calendar service to host command and control infrastructure. The exploit was developed by red teaming activities and published on GitHub. Aren't they all these days? And only a Gmail account is required. So the script creates a covert channel by exploiting the event descriptions in the calendar. So interesting. It looks like this is not being exploited in the wild just yet, but Mandiant is seeing it being discussed on cybercrime forums, so which means it is something that could be coming. So with so many people using Google Calendar, what's your take on the potential emerging threat here?
See, seems like maybe half the story is missing, right? Google said, but what Google didn't say was, we're working on patching this. We're analyzing the code. We've put something in place. Instead, it's, we haven't seen it yet. It's on GitHub. What does that mean for me, Google? Right? Like, this isn't my infrastructure. It's your infrastructure. So what does this mean for me, Google? What should I be doing? This is like half of a story. Did Google suddenly become BuzzFeed? Like, what can I do about this? And an RTA is not a small problem. This is a
Yeah.
big problem.
Yeah, I think
You can't just turn Google off, right?
I was going to ask you the question. So, I mean, what percentage of this is, we all talk about, user awareness, right? Security awareness and how people need to be, cyber aware. And obviously this is, an end user impacting, threat here. But what percent would you say should rely on user security awareness versus, the company's obligation to actually just fix the thing?
I mean, the challenge is there's nothing that's been truly effective, right? That's shown a really high level of efficacy in doing security awareness training and relying on security awareness. There just hasn't been anything. We still need to do it, right? But we're at least a decade away from solving that particular challenge. So I think unfortunately, it's 80-20 at best, right? 80% of it's on the vendor to fix the problem, 20% of it's on security training. And Google needs to give us a whole lot more information to tell us what we should do, because there's also no action statement in what you just read to me, right? And Google really should have had some sort of action statement.
I am sure it's forthcoming, and we will wait with bated breath on that. But before we do, let's move on to our next story. Data brokers selling U.S. service members secrets. Now, a report just came out from Duke University saying vast amounts of highly sensitive data on American military service members are up for sale by data brokers. Lead researcher Justin Sherman stated that since the data obtained information on mental health and financial situations could be used for blackmail or otherwise compromise active duty military personnel. Coming up on Veterans Day, this one doesn't sit too well, and the brokers were selling for records for as little as a penny per individual, and also willing to sell it to some of them a .asia domain. So some brokers definitely seem more focused on protecting the privacy of the transaction rather than protecting the data itself. So this one kind of turns knots in our stomach with practitioners out here trying to keep data safe. What's your take on a loophole like this, where basically data is just basically up for sale and seemingly legal?
I mean, it's not a loophole if you're legally allowed to advertise, right? Like, it's kind of hilarious if you just read up and go, okay, so compromise. Oh, giving it away for free. Right? Like, at some point, don't we have a responsibility to legislate and regulate this sort of thing? I'm all for free market capitalism, but maybe we shouldn't wholesale be the product. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they did call on Congress, and this is not the first time we've talked about data brokers. Yet the problem persists. But they did conclude by calling on Congress, to put some more clear legislation around this. It seems obvious, like you said, one of these is not like the other, right? When it's one thing to bypass a defense, it's another to just freely give the data out in the open market.
Yeah, I'm curious. CISO Series has got a pretty big viewing audience. Maybe CISO Series could start a 501c lobbying organization. We can all donate money. Data brokers are notoriously cheap. We might be able to match them dollar for dollar and make some moves.
A hot suggestion there for hopefully David Spark is listening, and I know that he is. So, all right, let's move on to our next story. U.S. launches Shields Ready campaign. So DHS, CISA, and FEMA announced this new campaign to promote overall resiliency and security for critical national infrastructure. This new campaign asks infrastructure providers to identify the most critical assets for operations, consider a range of threats of disruption, and evaluate their actual risk, develop a management plan, and maintain realistic incident response. So, a lot packed in there. Shields Ready focuses on resiliency, as we mentioned, whereas the predecessor Shields Up is more about time sensitive actions for specific risks. So, what do you think about the shift to resiliency versus the threats that are out there, and defending against those? And do you think it will have a material impact on better preparing infrastructure providers?
This just in, Sean. It looks like all of them are using the Veterans Affairs as a fundraiser. You can buy the data for any VA member for a penny, raising funds to audit critical infrastructure and see if they deserve the U.S. Shield. Like that's kind of my problem. Yet another standard, yet another little bug you get to put in your website, yet another thing that we're expecting companies to do, while at the same time saying all of our data is for sale for nearly free. Right? At some point, these agencies have to wake up and go, "Hey, while we shouldn't stop trying to plug one hole, it's not the biggest hole in the dike."
Right.
Right?
Maybe we should put the Titanic back into one piece instead of
And
fixing the small leak in the
well, and there should be
starboard
a
bow.
rule, right? Like Marie Kondo, was that her name that did the whole like downsizing thing? For every new thing you bring into your house, you have to get rid of two. For every new standard you announce, you have to get rid of two. Right? If you have a new framework, we got to get rid of two frameworks. There's too many frameworks, right? At some point, it's just like it's this monster that keeps eating itself, and every time we try to figure out the nuances to one, a new framework shows up, and we're suddenly going, what, does this replace? Does this augment? Is this in addition to what are we supposed to do here? And then, like I said, at the same time, right? If I
Right.
can buy the data for free,
Right. You're
what are we
missing the gigantic hole over here. So making small tweaks to existing regulations. I fully
right?
agree. It doesn't make any sense.
We're banning M80s while selling nuclear weapons. It's bizarre.
Yep. And by the way, David Spark confirmed he is listening. No word on the political action campaign, but we will keep ears out for that. All right, let's move on to our sponsor read for today. Our sponsor is OffSec, formerly Offensive Security, the cyber training company behind the well-known OSCP certification and Kali Linux distro is running a virtual summit for CISOs and cybersecurity leaders called Evolve on November 15th. Attend Evolve and get insider insights from a former bank hacker. Discover strategies for stretching your security budget and get tips to attract the creme de la creme of talent. It's more than just an event, it's a masterclass in helping you evaluate your cybersecurity leadership game. Hear from forward thinking cybersecurity leaders and companies like Cisco, Amazon, and Salesforce, and others. Register today to get the insights you need to help shape the future of your company's security. Sign up now at offsec.com/evolve. That's offsec.com/evolve. All right. Let's,
I do want to say on your
yeah,
sponsor, I think it's really neat when an open source company says, "Hey, we're not going to close source our stuff, especially something like Kali, right? Instead, we're going to add training as a way to raise funds to help continue making our mission sustainable." So, just a comment, I kind of like that.
yeah, thanks for putting the plug in there. I agree that that one seems intriguing. Not that they all don't have some value, but this one stands out. So I appreciate the plug there. All right, moving on. App Defense Alliance moves under the Linux Foundation. So Google started the App Defense Alliance in 2019 to help detect malicious apps in the Play Store. Since then, it expanded security assessments for apps and cloud services, as well as malware mitigation. The company has announced that App Defense Alliance will now join the Linux Foundation Project Joint Development Foundation, lots of words, as an independent organization. So the move will also see Meta and Microsoft join the ADA's steering committee. So, obviously moving hopefully towards more application security, stronger application security measures. What do you think about this trend and this move? Do you think it will move the needle on app security?
Um, I mean, I'm not familiar with it enough to know, did it move the needle for app security on the Google Marketplace? Because it's a notorious kind of back alley of danger and damage. If it did, then on one hand, this is fantastic. The other thing that should be brought up is Google has a tendency to run things for a couple of years and then just turn them off all of a sudden, right when people start to get excited about it. So I'm happy to see something like this moved under the Linux Foundation, which is a much mm, easier group to work with and is a umbrella that I think contains a quite a bit of trust within the industry, right? And so hopefully this will give them kind of the shield and trust that they need, and a little bit more kind of awareness without being under the Google umbrella and thus, under the umbrella of a for-profit organization and run by a for-profit organization, right? So hopefully this will spell a positive move. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, and I'm certainly going to do this, to go do some research into the ADA and see, are they actually executing against their mission? And is it something that we should all kind of not just support, but maybe demand that other organizations support so we get some standards?
Agreed. And do you think, like, at the broad level, do you think consolidation is the way of the future? Because it does seem like there are, groups spinning up kind of left and right in the cyberspace, all with probably a really good intentions and reasons for doing so. But I wonder if, combining forces in some cases would make us, have I guess, a stronger unified front, and whether that should be the way of the future.
I mean, it depends is my answer. It's unfortunately my answer to everything. I've seen a lot of these like new things start to spin up. And on one hand, you get so much democratization in some of them that you end up at the mean, and the mean doesn't actually get anything done. And so, like, I want to avoid that. The other thing I want to avoid is, again, this kind of constant change of, well, what am I supposed to pay attention to now? And then the third thing is, a lot of the frameworks that we look at, um, while they're neat and interesting, they're wholly academic. No one designs software that way. And so we need to have some alignment between the people who are designing software and the people who are monitoring and providing best practices, so that these two things kind of go together. So that if I'm adopting, some of these frameworks, I can in fact plug things in, and it's not, get back 30 feet and ram it in as fast as you can because it's a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, please, no more frameworks. And then there are frameworks that bring all the frameworks together. So
Meta
that
frameworks, those are the
those are the
best.
best. That's my favorite. All right. Agree to agree. Let's move on to the next story. Python developers warned against becoming targets. The researchers have been tracking malware intended to infect computers of developers who work in Python and who are looking for tools that will help disguise their code in development. The article focuses on a package called Blaze Stealer, which enables a bot on the Discord messaging service that gives attackers complete control over the victim's computer. This came again, the victim being the developer. Usually, we're victimized by developers. So, what's your spin on a story like this, looking to exploit people at their at the root, and how do you establish policies and procedures to help defend it against something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long time coming. Surprised this isn't a more popular story. Like, this is not every third week, because ultimately I pay developers to be fast historically, right?
Yep.
Historically, we've always paid them to be fast, and security is slow by its very nature, right? All
Mhm.
the things that we need to do add friction. Developers are paid to reduce friction, and
Yep.
and Python developers are by default looking for additional libraries to help them not have to reinvent the wheel, right? And so their default is, I'm going to try 1,000 things, find one that works, use that one, move forward, and then move on to the next thing that's in my sprint. Move on to the next sprint that I have to do, right? Whatever language works for you. So it's a little bit kind of like, of course this is happening, and of course we've got ourselves into trouble. And the best way so one, you can solve some of it with technology, right? And there's some kind of VM dev environment things that allow you to have a lot more kind of command and control over um, the sterilization of those environments. That can be useful, but is a massive undertaking in new administration and likely cost. There's training, but organizations also have to recognize that in order to fix any of these problems, you have to stop paying developers to be fast at all costs, right? And
Yep.
if we just started there, that probably would give us at least the breathing room to start to really fix some of these problems. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, I kind of made the snide remark about developers, but without them, literally nothing would get done. And I agree. That's what they're being incentivized to get to the market as quickly as possible. And your remark on the sandboxing and the test and development environments resonates too. It sounds very easy to spin those up, but the integrations are lacking. You don't have the data that you need to test properly and things of those nature. It's a big challenge and
it
a
may not
huge
it may not
cost.
even be legal to use the data that you have, right?
That
That's the other challenge, right?
that's right, making or de-identifying it and being
Yeah.
synthetic, there's a lot of cost to all of that, so interesting, and thanks for the take on that one. So move on to, OpenAI blames DDoS attacks for ongoing ChatGPT outages. Couldn't get by without doing a generative AI story here. OpenAI confirmed on Thursday that the periodic outages affecting its API and ChatGPT services were DDoS related. Users saw error messages in their ChatGPT windows as well as on generative art engine DALL-E on Monday. Anonymous Sudan is claiming responsibility for the outage and that it used a Skynet botnet to carry out the attack, but Bleeping Computer says this claim may be false and that many cybersecurity researchers are looking at Russia instead. So I guess, maybe regardless of, who propagated the DDoS attack, what do you think the implications are for this technology that, is becoming obviously exponentially more in use?
I don't think the outage of ChatGPT is the problem as much as the dumbing down of ChatGPT is the problem. Like, it's one thing to say, "Hey, you know that service that you're really underpaying for? It's not as reliable as you'd like it to be." Okay. "Hey, you know that service that you're relying on to provide inconsistent but results at a collegiate level? Yeah, today it ate a lot of lead paint. And then tomorrow it ate a lot of lead paint and is slow, but the day after that it will be fantastic again for some indeterminate amount of time, and then we're back to eating paint." Right? Like, and that's kind of what made it a little frustrating for me, all in
Hmm.
all, is, okay, cool, it's another DDoS attack, we're kinda used to that, the application's attacked, but the results are still inconsistent to a too high of a degree, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, I can't get any better with the analogy of having the lead paint. So, thanks for the hot take on that one. CCL also commented in the chat on the last story. Seems like developers and researchers are the hot new targets. Wondering if the IT and app side is getting harder as well. Any insights on that?
I mean, ultimately, if I'm able to get to the developer, do I not also then have the ability to manipulate the source code? Like, whatever the developer is working on, do I not then have the ability to start making applications that should be trusted, not really as trustworthy as they were before? So that might be another reason for it. And yeah, right. The IT app side is getting harder. But again, developers are just individuals. So attacking individuals are a great way to get in. And developers work with an elevated set of permissions as kind of the de facto default. So again, I think it's totally reasonable and logical that this is happening, and frightening at the same time.
Yeah. Well, thanks CCL for the comments, and thank you Howard for your take on that. That brings us to the end of the show. The 20 minutes always seems to fly by, but Howard, any thumbs up or eye roller stories, anything that stood out to you of the ones we covered today?
I mean, yeah, I think everyone heard my opinion pretty thoroughly on the data brokers.
Yeah. Spoiler alert on that one. I had a guess that might be the one that stood out, and full agreement there. um, so where can people find you if they're so inclined to find you on the interwebs? And are you hiring?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is by far the best place. It's the only social media location that I'm at all active on. And while I am not currently hiring, I do get about 5 updates of people that are hiring, and I always repost them. I really try to make sure that that stuff gets as much amplification as possible. So if you are looking, follow me. I'm also happy to help. So I've got a big network. If there's anything I can do to help, give tips on a resume or something, please just by all means let me know.
Awesome. Thanks for supporting in networking. It's a real thing, and here we are doing it. So thanks to our guest, Howard Holton, CTO at GigaOm. Also, thank you to our sponsor, OffSec, who is hosting a virtual summit for our CISOs and cybersecurity leaders called Evolve on November 15th. And our very own David Spark will be speaking at that event. So don't let me not plug that as well. So definitely something you want to check out. Also, thanks to the audience, especially, CCL, for chiming in with your comments. We appreciate the interaction, and as always, we'll be back next week with another episode of Week in Review show. And in the meantime, you can get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines every day in about 6 minutes. For Howard Holton, I'm Sean Kelly, and wishing you all a very happy Veterans Day, and thank you all for your service, those of you out there who are veterans, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.